you know, in Swahili government is called serikali. So understand it comes from serikali. So I think the default setting is to keep all these secrets. But again, maybe going to law or accounting, the gentleman here who has been inducted in the States, I suspect it's an individual. And the company doing business in Kenya, I suspect it's a limited liability company. So technically speaking, those are two different bodies. So one can actually argue that if you don't lift the veil of incorporation, that they are Adani doing business in Kenya has no connection at all with Adani in the US, unless now somebody goes through the list of shareholders to establish who actually has the shares. But you see now that is from a technical perspective. I mean, you know, lawyers now can go to court and argue that this is actually a limited liability company. There are very many cases. The one which comes to my mind is a case celebrated called Solomon and Solomon, where they wanted to determine if Michelle owns a company 100%. So the company is called Michelle Ngele Limited, and then there is a Michelle. What is the difference between those two? And I understand that's how you have the concept of limited liability. But again, you know, that will be going to technical issues. Now, part of the reasons why countries like, the Nordic countries are very high performance indicators is for one reason, that the levels of transparency are extremely high. The levels of trust are extremely high. That a public servant who makes statements and misleads the people falls into trouble. Now, for the case of Churchill Kayamba, in my view, I don't see any mistake on CS Churchill's part, because by the time he went to the National Assembly or the Senate, when he was making those statements, these Adani in the US had not gotten into trouble. So you can actually argue that when I made my presentation, to the best of my knowledge and to the best of my capacity, the information at hand suggested that these guys were clean. And then it's not unusual to have all these multinationals falling into trouble all over the world. Like in the case of the South African state capture, when Zuma was being accused, a number of these international companies have gotten into trouble. So maybe the competent authorities would want to investigate to find out whether this would affect Kenya. But from a political risk perspective, this Adani conversation in Kenya has become so poisoned, especially the one on the airport. So it may be prudent for the competent authorities to actually abandon it in total and then now invite fresh applications so that we get a new team. Because the people who have been opposing Adani at the airport, right now they've got fresh content for them to start jumping to town and saying, they'll actually go to the top of Mount Kenya today or Mount Kilimanjaro or even Everest and say, we warned you. And they'll say that we are not happy to tell you that we warned you, lakini tuliwawarn, and see this is what has happened. So in my view, they should consider abandoning Adani's interest at the airport in total and get an entirely different player to come on board.